Tell you what, now that I've got this bench and my own proper vise, it is so good. It is such a good thing to have for a variety of reasons. One of which is when you've got a good vise and a good bench, it encourages you to use your planes. Right, so what have I got here? What am I doing? Why am I making this triangle? Well, I'll plane up that surface as well, because they're not completely flush. But why am I making this triangular object? That angle, or the angle that would be there if I hadn't cut off the end, is 15 degrees, very close to it. And 15 degrees, or very close to it, is the back angle that I want on my back-angled headstocks. And I'm making a jig to enable me to accurately and more easily cut the scarf joint into the neck to create the headstock back angle. See how I do that? Over on the bandsaw, I've got some pieces of wood gluing together. They're gluing here because I wanted to put them in place where I'm going to be using them and making sure that I am gluing them in the right place. That's going to combine with that angled block that I made to make a jig for cutting a perfect 15-degree angle. Well, it might not be exactly 15 degrees, but that's the way I designed it. It'll be very close to it. I'll let the glue dry and I'll tidy this thing up and show you how it works. So what is this monstrosity that I've cobbled together? In this video, I'll race through most of the build and just pause every now and then to say something when there's something worth saying. In the past, when I've made back-angled headstocks, and not that I've made lots, I've only made a couple. Remember, I am still quite a beginner. It's just that I've been doing it a couple of years now, a little while, because of the hiatus that I took when I moved house and set up the new workshop. Anyway, that is a board. Actually, it's a floorboard, but I put it through the thicknesser and planed it to just the right thickness so that it would sit when you turn it on its side. Ooh, it's tipping over because it's hanging off the end of the table now. It would sit nicely in the slot for the mitre guide, like that one. And I've attached wood on either side with glue and screws, so that it sits relatively stably. There's a tiny bit of wobble, but it should be fine. And I have attached to that angled block, the 15-degree angled block, to that wood. I've padded it out just enough so that the block only just clears the blade guide, so that there'll be no interference there and I can slide all the way through. This should help me to make a nice, easy scarf joint. Well, I'm certainly an advocate of using recycled timber. I don't know if you can see that sign in the background. I'm at a place called the Rusty Nail. Here we are, free advertising, but they're a good place. A good place. And I've just got this piece of limu, rather light in colour, that I'm going to use to make a neck. And this is how it's done. all I've done is taken the board, jointed one face and one edge, then put it through the thicknesser. And it's turned out to be, the light's not ideal at this time of day, but it's turned out to be a pretty stunning piece of wood. Samarimu is quite dark. The heartwood, this is more sapwood with a streak of something that feels very resiny just there, and that looks great. So there we are. This is going to be the neck. And I think, because why not, I'll make this the neck for the body that I've recently made out of recycled timber. You might have seen that the blade came through at the bottom just before it came through at the top, which means that the right angle isn't flawless, it's very close, and so my block just needs a little bit of tweaking of plane the surface of that. I can certainly work with this though, so let's get on with that. So I've flipped over the piece that I cut off and clamped these two pieces together, and the angle should line up. And to make sure that it does, just so I get a perfect, or as perfect as possible, scarf joint, I'm planing across both of these angled surfaces. The device isn't ideal for this. I'll just clamp it to the side of the bench. I'm sorry, I suffered a flat battery on my phone whilst I was recording the flattening of those two surfaces. Looks like it's gone okay. That scarf join isn't glued up, it's just dry clamped, and the surfaces seem pretty well seated together. Okay, that's the headstock side of the neck, obviously larger than it needs to be. I will thickness that, cut out the headstock, do the proper glue up, and proceed with the neck at full speed. I've routed out nearly the whole truss rod channel now. I just went and got the truss rod itself, made sure that it was sufficiently deep, and it is, although there is the larger end of the truss rod where you do the adjustment. So I'm just going to get a larger bit to route out that part of the channel now. The process of routing that smaller but wider slot is exactly the same as the routing process in general, so I didn't show you, but that's a good fit. Nice, happy with that. Now I can move on, and what will I do next? Maybe I'll even put the fretboard on next, and then I can shape the neck around it. Yeah, that could be a plan. Well, I've changed my mind. I am going to do some shaping of the neck before I put on the fretboard. I haven't used these yet, but I've built templates for neck size and shape, which is basically the same as saying a template for a fretboard, because that's the shape that a neck has to be. This is a 25.5 inch scale, or based on one. So I've put some double-sided stick tape down here. I just need to, well, maybe I should have peeled this layer off before I turn the camera on. Alright, and I've marked the point where the 24th fret will fall. Okay, that looks pretty good, I think. Yep, that looks pretty good. Now the template is longer than the fretboard needs to be, which is fine. It means I can route off the material, cut and route off the material on the sides of the neck, and then I can shape the end once the fretboard is on. Don't get complacent with a router. I didn't do any real damage there, but I should have waited more carefully until the bit had finished spinning. I've put a nick into the other side of this template, so I'll have to replace the template. Unfortunately, it's on part of the neck that I've already routed. You see there, of course I don't want that nick to remain, because it will mean, well, it'll mean a dent in the side of my guitar necks as I route them out. So that's rubbish. Ah, well. I've got several fretboards sitting around, and I've decided to go with this one because it is, well, it's a bit batty. And we're looking at it upside down. And yes, I am still buying pre-slotted, pre-inlaid fretboards on eBay from China. Why? Because I can. And they look good. One day I'll do it all myself. Anyway. So the template that I use to route the shape of the neck leaves the neck ever so slightly wider than a standard 6-string fretboard. Ever so slightly. So once this is glued on, there'll be a little bit more routing to do, but let's glue that on. Before I do glue the fretboard on, just one little trick that might help you. It has helped me. One of the really annoying things when you're trying to glue a fretboard on is that the glue, before it starts to go tacky, it's almost like a lubricant. The glue enables the fretboard to slide around on the neck. So what I do is I hammer in two very small nails, almost panel pins, or two at one end and two down the other, and then I snip them so that all that's left, that's a little bit too close, so that all that's left is a little spike that sticks into the fretboard, which I can then bang on with a couple of taps of the hammer, so that when it's gluing up, it doesn't slide. Right, on with the show. I've used way too much. Doesn't matter so much that I've used too much and it's going to run down the sides, because those sides are all going to be cut off when I do the shaping. Rid of this wasteful. I'm pretty sure we are good. I don't want using a piece of wood with the curved radius. Sorry, a curved radius. All radiuses are curved. With a radius carved into the inside, so that it applies pressure to the outside first and foremost of the fretboard, because that's a really important part to glue down securely. But I don't want to glue these things together, hence the tape. I think we're good. Okay, so this is coming along nicely. Just trimming the neck to the size of the fretboard. I'll continue with this. This is, I mean, it looks like a pretty easy thing to do, and it is, but it was when doing something similar to this, not quite the same, on this very table that I injured myself. So, yeah, it's not quite a flashback situation, but I'm proceeding very cautiously. Right, I have finished over at the router table. Did a bit of routing by hand, used some other tools, including a sander and a scraper. And the neck is ready for the next step, which might be radiusing. I'll think about that. What's occupying my mind just now is thinking about what type of neck joint I will use. Really, I've got two options with a neck like this. It could be a simple bolt-on, or it could be glued in. If it's a bolt-on, I'll have to cut that off, which is, of course, not a problem. That's just what I'll have to do. That should be enough length overhanging the end of the fretboard to give me easily enough contact between the neck and the body to glue that in. I'll check, but that's what I'm thinking about at the moment. I was trying something experimental, well, something a little bit lazy really, because the time had come to put a radius onto the fretboard, and I thought, well, I'll see if I can save some time and use the electric sander. It's a technique that I think I can develop and get really good at in the future, but it's a bit extreme, and that's really thin on the edges. That's quite an extreme radius, my goodness. I mean, don't get me wrong, it could actually be nice. It's not that extreme at the top, although it's more extreme than I would normally do. I should really have just used my radius sanding block. But, look, I mean, it's a lot of effort to get a fretboard off. It's another lazy approach, saying, oh, look, it's too hard to take it off. Why don't I just see what I can do with it? I mean, it looks and feels nice, though. That's the thing. I don't want to waste that if it could potentially be something nice. Let's see what I can do. Okay, I think I'm going to keep this radius. I think it's usable. It's fairly extreme, but, you know, sometimes you do things that are fairly extreme. I've taken... what do you even call that? A straight edge? I think it's called a straight edge. If there is a name, it's dropped off the tip of my tongue and I can't remember it anymore. And what I've done is... the purpose of this thing is to make sure that your fretboard is straight. So... because, you know, the electric sander could be less than precise, so I've placed this at pretty much every point across the width of the fretboard, and it is nice and straight. It wasn't initially, so I sanded out those spots. Okay, so then I took to it with a radius block. Actually, I did that to sand out the spots that weren't straight, and now it is straight. And I've gone through 120 grit, 240 grit, 400 grit, and now, just by hand, I'm making it nice with 600 grit, and I think that's... I nearly said I think that's as far as I go. I might go further, actually, just because why not? You know, you're not going to do wrong by polishing your fretboard too much. So I think once I've done this, I will give the surface of the fretboard a cut and polish. How's that?